Hello, my name is Alejandro Leal. I'm a research analyst at KuppingerCole.
And I'm Huzefa Olia. I'm co-founder CEO at One Cosmos. Very good to see you, Alejandro.
Good to see you again. Tell me yourself, you've been in the industry for a number of years. Can you tell me how can we drive more adoption of passwordless authentication in the market?
That's a great question, right? Most customers, that's the first question that they ask us. Passwordless, we want to do it, right? And just that we have to sell this internally, right? It cannot be a multi-year project. Um, the approach that we prescribe is, passwordless. There are multiple methods to do it, right? And there are multiple different geographies, especially for large organizations. You may have a user base that is in Asia or in LATAM or emerging markets, right? Where you may not have a device or a factor like biometrics that can be easily applied, right? So how do you bring them into the equation as well? So that's the prescription that we provide, where the experiences may change a little bit depending on your user population, but at the end of the day, the credential or the password has to be removed, right, from all of the different types of applications, right? And when we present that to our users, right, that brings in not just a section of the community, but brings in the overall populations, and that becomes an easier thing to adopt. Right. And then the last thing I tell our customers is passwordless from a security standpoint is not what they have to focus on. Right. Of course, the technology that they choose has to be, best in brand when it comes to security, has to take care of, any loopholes which are going to be present. But it is more about the customer and the user experience, which is going to drive the adoption. Right. If your passwordless experience is going to be easier, faster compared to what they're used to, which is entering a username or a password, right? That is what is going to drive the adoption, right? So we at One Cosmos, right, has done a lot of different things. Like even if you're using your smartphone, don't go into your app. Just use your camera, right, to scan the code, right, and that will give you a request to authenticate. So small pieces of experience that makes the overall adoption very, very big. And the last bit I tell our customers is that when they are on this journey of passwordless, measure your success. If you have rolled out passwordless for an application enterprise wide, or have a CSAT survey done, right? What can be improved, what can be changed, what can be modified, so that your next application, right, you're not making the same mistakes you.
That's right. I think this is a conversation that we must have. I think you and I talked about how we can promote passwordless in regions that maybe don't have smartphones, for example. And if we really want to have this conversation, we need to also take into consideration those places. Maybe can you also expand on the common use cases that you see emerging?
Yeah. Um, Again, when it comes to use cases, always look for where you would find the biggest bang, right? Where uh, when you uh, when you look at any kind of a passwordless experience, you're removing passwords. So which applications are looking for most of the authentication happening? Remote access portals today, your operating systems being one of them, your corporate portals, that has most of your users logging in. So if you look at passwordless as a phased approach, right, the first phase should be your remote access gateway. If you have VDI, including that as well as your Windows operating system, right, and Mac if you have that as well, to transform that into a passwordless experience. Right? Phase two can be more of enterprise applications, and then eventually, even if you have custom applications to build them in. Right? But pretty much, if you take the approach of an operating system, remote access gateways, immediately your help desk calls for password reset, right, are going to go down by a huge factor. You're talking about 40-50%, right, reduction in calls, which is a significant cost saving as well.
Absolutely. Speaking of the enterprise, we live in a connected world where we can work pretty much from anywhere. I work remotely myself. How can we tell organizations and enterprises to do things better, to do onboarding more efficient, and to do perhaps contact-free onboarding.
Yeah, but so when we started the company One Cosmos, the biggest challenge that we saw in identity is identity and authentication were not talking to each other. So that's the bridge that we're looking to solve, right? And the way we do this is any new user that gets onboarded today with an employee or a contractor, an organization, like you said, it's a very different experience. You don't know who's the user, behind the device. So we provide a whole digital journey where we can proof the user. We do it based on standards. There is the NIST 863-3 that tells, you can scan different types of IDs, right? And you get a user to an insurance service. So we provide all of that and we plug that in as part of the user onboarding cycle. So between the user's talent acquisition and HR process, this before the user record gets created, we provide that, ability. And then that has a lot of advantages. It's not a one-time thing, but think of zero trust as an example, right? Zero trust is built on the whole premise of you need to, trust the device that the user is logging in, which is absolutely right, right? But then if you have a critical application, do you want to limit, your trust only to the device, or you want to bring identity into this? Right? So what we do is, since we have verified a user, we verify it based on multiple different criteria, like taking a live selfie capabilities that we have built in. So we use that for authentication as well. Right? So irrespective of the device that you're coming in from, we also have the live selfie to authenticate the user. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Huzefa. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.